In lesson 9, we're going to look at dividing with decimals and whole numbers. So we're just going to review some keywords here. A divisor is the number that you're dividing by. The dividend is the number you're dividing into, and the quotient is the answer to a division problem. If set up this way, your dividend is the number inside what I refer to as the house. Outside is your divisor, and then up top is your quotient. Okay, so we're going to look at some examples. We are going to divide and use multiplication to check our work. Notice it says do not use a calculator. This is one of our fluencies, and we do not use calculators for fluencies. So when you have a division problem set up like this, the divisor is the number you're dividing by. So whenever I see my division symbol, whatever comes after that, that's my divisor. Okay, so I'm dividing by 27. Remember, the divisor is the number that's outside the house, that, like I call it. And then our first number is our dividend, or the number that goes inside that house. I typically leave my commas out when I'm dividing. It doesn't really matter if you have it in there or not. I just find it's a little bit extra to have in the way. So when you're dividing, you should be using the idea, does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers? I'm sure we've all heard this before. D stands for divide, M stands for multiply, S is subtract, C is check, and B is bring down. And we'll walk through those steps as we go. So the first thing we're going to do is divide. We have to determine what we're actually going to be dividing into to start. So I have 27 as my divisor. I always start by saying, can 27 go into 1? No. Can 27 go into 17? No. Can 27 go into 175? Yes. The number that we're going into should be 27 or more. So the way that I do this is I look at the 27, I look at the first digit here, and then I look to see if it can go into 1. No. Can it go into 17? Yes. So 2 can go into 17 8 times. So that's where I'm actually going to start. I know there's so many methods that people use to figure out where to start, and use whichever method is easiest for you to work with. This is just the way I learned it, so this is the way I work with it. So I would pull to the side and show my work. I don't ever erase any of my side work because this could come back to help me in the long run in the problem. I see that this is too high, so I would continue multiplying off to the side until I get a number that's going to work for this situation. And I finally wind up with 6, and that gave me 162. Now what's important here is I'm going to put this 6 up top above the last digit of the number I'm going into. So since I went into 175, above this 5, I'm going to put the 6. So there's my division piece. The next piece is the multiplication piece. So I'm taking my divisor and multiplying it by the first digit in my quotient, which I've already kind of done to the side here. So the 27 times 6 tells me I've got 162. I'm going to line that up underneath the number that I divided into. And the next step is to subtract. So I'm going to subtract these two numbers. Once you subtract, I always recommend checking. That's this next piece here, the cheeseburgers. Some people only say, does McDonald's sell burgers? I say cheeseburgers because I want you to check. After you subtract, the difference that you get should be less than your divisor. So 26 or less. If it's 27 or more, that means this number up here is too small. You got to go up more. But since 13 is less than 27, that means I'm good to go, which means I'm going to do my next step, which is to bring down. And I'm going to bring down the next number that's hanging out here, which is the 5. I now need to start the process back again by dividing. So I'm going to divide 27 into 135. To do that, I'm going to use multiplication. If I look to the side, I can see that 162 is too high. So I'm going to try 5, which gives me exactly 135. So the 5 goes up top. I'm going to be subtracting, checking, and there's nothing left to bring down. So this would be my quotient. You can check division with multiplication, and I highly recommend doing that. To check it, if you take your quotient and multiply it by your divisor, your answer should be the dividend. So in this case, I'm going to take my 65, multiply it by my 27, or my divisor, and I should wind up with my dividend if I divided correctly and now multiplied correctly. I think I messed up there. What did I? 13, 14. Oops, I still messed up. Hold on. 35, 3, 55, 0, 10. Carry the 1. Oh, 13. Yep. And this is how we learn from our mistakes. Okay, so now I can check. Does this match this? It does. Okay, so that's how we're going to be dividing. Let's look at another example. Okay, in this one, notice we're bringing in a decimal. So I'm dividing by 25, and my dividend is 87.5, or 87 5/10. If you have a decimal in your dividend, it's actually quite easy to work with. You take the decimal and you pull it straight up into your quotient, and then just ignore it. So now I'm going to go ahead and divide as though that decimal point's not even there. My divisor is 25, which is actually quite easy to work with if you think in terms of quarters, like money quarters. So I'm going to do 25 into not 8 because it's too small, but 87. If I have 2 quarters, that's 50 cents. If I have 3 quarters, that's 75 cents. And if I have 4 quarters, that's $1 or 100 cents, which is too high. So 25 can go into 87 3 times. 25 times 3 is 75. Stop and check. 12 is less than 25. So I'm good to move on and bring down the 5. So 25 goes into 125 5 times, because $1.25 would be 5 quarters. And that works out to a 0. So to do my multiplication check, I'm going to take my 3.5 and multiply it by my 25. Let's hope I didn't make a mistake this time. When I'm multiplying with decimals, remember you have to count how many digits are after the decimal in each of your factors. In this case, there's only 1, which means 1 after the decimal in my product. Those two match, so I should be good to go. Okay, with the next one, I have 2 whole numbers. I'm doing 256 divided by 5. This should be fairly simple. We have a single digit divisor. 5 goes into 25 5 times, which is 25. Bring down the 6. 5 goes into 6 1 time. And this leaves us with a remainder. Since we're in decimal land right now, we're going to use a decimal to show our remainder. And to do that, what you do is next to the dividend, you place a decimal point. Just as you did with the dividend decimal prior to this, you're going to pull that decimal straight up into your answer. Then you can attach as many zeros as you like because it doesn't change the value of the problem. Bring down the 0 and continue dividing. 5 goes into 10 2 times, which is 10. And this works out at this point, but say it didn't. I can just keep attaching zeros and bringing them down until it works out equally, or I'm told to round to a specific place. I'm going to check with multiplication. One digit here, 0 here, so 1. puts that there, 256.0, 256.0.